Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the meeting of the city's Development and Zoning Review Committee. The purpose of this meeting is to provide this party an opportunity to informally introduce the concept of a proposed development to certain key city decision makers and to allow them to ask questions and provide comments. No decisions or recommendations on the proposed development will be made by this committee. Any proposals for development you hear or see today are in a very early conceptual stage of planning without the city's Department of Planning and Public Works having had the opportunity to review them. Accordingly, discussion of specific details of any proposed development at this time is premature, as they are subject to change prior to the formal submission process. In light of the informal and preliminary nature of this presentation today, the public has been invited to attend both via Zoom webinar platform or streaming live on YouTube and learn about the concepts associated with the proposed development in your city. But public comment will not be offered at this time. Any person interested in commenting on the proposal discussed today is encouraged to contact their elected representatives and also take advantage of the numerous opportunities to speak before the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council when, if such occurs, the development is formally submitted for the city's consideration. So, Mr. Vunich, with that, do we start the meeting and you have any comments?
Well, Mr. Chair, if Mr. Newberry could do a quick roll call, then yeah, we'll jump right into it.
Okay.
Councilmember Brost.
Here.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Mayor Whalen.
Here.
Chair Beatty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. And members of the committee, tonight is a preliminary discussion of a design concept for a large lot, single-family residential subdivision on an approximately 66-acre tract of land located at the northeast corner of Millrose Road and State Route 100, which consists of 13 lots ranging in size from 3 acres to over 6 acres in area, with approximately 20 acres of common ground, future open space. Street address 18456 Woodland Meadows Drive, St. Louis County, locator number 25X520021, and the property is located in Ward 1. Members of the committee, the Department of Planning has provided for your consideration tonight several items. The first in the packet of information was tonight's agenda for your consideration. Secondly, the petitioner, in this case, Whalen Custom Homes, provided several sheets of information relating to the project. Principal amongst those is the grading plan, which I think is the best at depicting the proposed project and some of its key characteristics. Also, along with those sheets, the department did provide the historical inventory from the city's survey relating to the existing dwelling that's on the property. That dwelling on the property does have historical significance. Along with that, the department provided the regulations for our large lot single family subdivision from our subdivision and development regulations, and then finally the bylaws, just in case there are any questions regarding the process. And with that, I'll conclude. And if there are any questions of Ms. Ripito, Mr. Newberry, Mr. Cross, or I, we'd be glad to answer them at this time. And before I close, if Mr. Whalen, is there anyone else you want promoted out of your group?
Mike Vonderheide, our civil engineer, is also available to answer any questions.
And Mr. Brost, thank you. And like I say, if there's any questions, we'll do our best to answer them at this time.
Am I up, Joe?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I guess at this point, does Mr. Whalen make a presentation?
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you all. Thank you all for meeting and taking a look at this. It's a beautiful piece of property. We're very proud to present it. It's been quite a while. In fact, we went back about 5 years or so, and we couldn't find any large lot developments that have been proposed in Wildwood as such. Our whole goal with this project was to preserve as much green space as possible. It's a very unique piece of property. Meadows, it's kind of a ridge line, and then it has just an incredible mature forest, which we are trying not to disturb at all, and has some beautiful streams in the valley. It's just a gorgeous piece of property. So, we laid it out in a manner that we thought made sense. It's an economically sensible project in terms of what we had to pay for it, and we'll be able to sell these lots, I think, in relatively short order. We do have Bay's high-speed internet is at the site. We will be able to serve the site eventually with natural gas from Spire. Ameren UE's looked at it. It's just going to be a super nice development, and we are barely touching the trees. We did our tree study, and we sent it in to Mr. Vunich and Travis. It was performed by Skip Kincaid from Hanson's Tree Service, and there's a handful of grand trees that come down, but there are literally hundreds that are being preserved. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. I'd be happy to meet any of you over at the site and give you a tour if you'd like. I did read the historical preservation report on the house. The house was ransacked. All the historic windows were stolen. The family did an auction after Mr. Theis passed away, and they sold everything but the kitchen sink. So it's rotten, termite infested. I mean, there's probably some neat pieces that could be salvaged from it for something, repurposed, but the house itself is not on any utilities and is really in very poor shape. The historic report said that it was in good shape, and most of the windows are gone. So and the floor is rotting out. So I disagree with what I read in that historic evaluation, but there is some pretty neat stuff that could probably be preserved and repurposed. That being said, I'm happy to answer any questions for you. This is something we'd love to get going this year. We don't have to change zoning. It's minimal land disturbance. It's just really a very special piece. And, I think it's exactly what Wildwood is looking for is, nice houses on large lots with a ton of green space and, just a conservation and preservation sort of development philosophy. So anyway, I'd be happy to answer anyone's questions.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Mike, for bringing this forward. I'm fully supportive of it. I just had a couple of preliminary questions or informational questions, I guess. First of all, so is there, do we have, Joe or Travis, a map that shows exactly where this parcel is located?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Newberry has a couple of aerial photographs.
And can you enlarge that, Travis?
So, Mr. Mayor, generally speaking, this is the site of the proposed development. Route 100, Mr. Newberry's identifying that. And then Millrose is the southern boundary of the parcel of ground, so to speak.
Right. Okay. Now I know where we are. Then my second and last question is, Mike, do you have any type of elevation of a typical, what the homes are going to look like, or are they each going to be different because they're custom, and so there'll be a lot of variation in that, or what's up with that?
Oh, Mr. Mayor, thank you for asking that question. I would expect this to sort of kind of be along the lines of the stone mill type homes. The people that I've spoken with, people that want everything's custom. Everything we do is custom, and it's really important to us and our clients about having a cohesive look. So I would just pull Stone Mill and Old Town Park as sort of an example of what I would expect to be built here. We're building a lot of, I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity, we probably build 10 plus big, beautiful custom homes on large lots in Wildwood every year, 10 to 20. We've got a beautiful ranch at 4424 Chateau Lane. That's gorgeous. We're building a beautiful home at 1141 Pond Road, a couple other lots off of Homan Road. We just did 349 Larimore Valley. Some of them are on my website, Mr. Mayor. I'd be happy to send you some pictures. But people that want these sort of large rural, semi-rural wooded lots tend to want more of a transitional, sort of craftsman-y style, clean lines and nice mixture of hardy board and brick and stone and whatnot. But I'd be more than happy to send you pictures of what I've built over the past, 24 months in Wildwood on large lots. And most of them are, I would say, stone mill-ish, in terms of what they look like, modern farmhouse, some board and batten siding, exposed timbers, things like that. But I think you'd be really happy with what, if you saw some of the big custom homes we built in Wildwood over the past couple of years, I think you'd really be impressed with them.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And no, you don't need to say anything. I'm good. I just had that question. Again, I'm fully supportive. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So, Mr. Whalen, so what you're saying is the homes that will be in this area will, each and every one will be a custom home. You don't plan to, you're going to be building and designing for each specific lot?
Yes, sir, Mr. Bros. We, believe it or not, we do that on every one of our projects is drawn from scratch, every single one. And sometimes in neighborhood environments, clients will try to emulate other homes, but literally every Whalen custom home starts with a blank sheet of paper. There's no cookie cutters. We have hundreds of floor plans we've built, over the past 20 years. But yeah, every single house will be custom, and it, for the sake of the other owners, we want it to be a cohesive look. If somebody wants to build a really contemporary home or something like that, I build those. I'm not opposed to that in general, but I would be opposed to building that next to two what I would consider more neo-traditional houses, like you would see in Stone Mill. So we'll keep a really nice architectural consistency throughout the development. I think, I don't know how word of this has gotten out, but my people are beating down my door for these lots. They're nice. They actually have yards, the trees. It's so beautiful. Any one of you are welcome to go out there anytime. And I'd be more than happy to walk you around and kind of show it to you.
So, and it looks like the homes that would back to 100, I guess, will be visible from 100?
No, that's a great question, Mr. Bros. There are actually it's neat. There are 2 tree lines. You can't see them on this grading plan, but there's a tree line from along 100, and it's cedars and whatnot, but it's been there for a long time. And then there's another tree line behind the houses. So I was thinking that, if somebody wanted an equestrian type, like lots 1 and 2 are beautiful pasture, just absolutely beautiful pasture. And so and they actually sit below 100. So the property kind of comes down, but you have 2 tree lines and then the house. So you will not see 100 from the back of those houses, and 100 will not see those houses unless, maybe a glimpse of lot 1, but it really lays out super, super nice. Super nice. In fact, Travis, if you wouldn't mind pulling up that aerial photo, it kind of illustrates real clearly the 2 tree lines that are there. So if you zoom in, yeah, thank you, Travis. So where the aqua blue line is tree line number 1, and then you see Mr. Bros tree line number 2. The houses for lots 1 and 2 would be on the east side of that line of cedars. So you really have a really nice buffer off of 100, both visually and audibly, because 100 gets a little loud out there. That was the amazing thing to me. I remember, gosh, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, McBride and Sons did that thing off Wild Horse, and it was so loud on those lots. I could not believe how quickly they sold, and it's much quieter over here than that McBride and Sons project was.
All right, well, thank you. Teresa?
Thank you, Chair Larry. Yeah, Mike, the common ground area, is there a guarantee that that's going to be kept common ground area? Is there plans for the future to make that into something else and put a road through?
No, I'll deed restrict it. I'll do whatever I have to do. It is the most pristine, beautiful. So when Travis, Joe, and I first started talking about this, we talked about maybe, doing some sort of conservation easement on it. And I talked to Missouri Department of Conservation, and they're like, yeah, that's all well and good, but then you'll have hunters and all that kind of stuff back there. And I don't want people with guns going back there or anything. So we'll tie it up. We'll deed restrict it in the common ground. It would be, I would think anybody trying to, there's no way to get to it once this, if our plat is approved, there's really no way to get to it. There's a couple places where maybe you could build a house up there, but it's just, you'd have to cross jurisdictional creeks and you'd have to tear down so many trees that it's better left alone, pristine. So I would be open to any we just don't want people going there and having parties and, disturbing the neighbors. So we just figured we'd make it common ground. But if there was any other sort of deed restriction that the department thought was more appropriate, we don't care. We just don't want it to get disturbed. It's so beautiful. You need to walk it. It's so pretty back there. It's like a park.
Well, I would be interested in walking it myself.
You're welcome. Yeah, I'll walk it with you whenever you're ready. Just there's kind of an old logging road. It's kind of an old logging road sort of by lot 8. It's pretty steep. But if you want to walk down there and see it, it is so pretty. I take my dogs I take my dogs over there, once a week and just let them go bananas, because they like to run down to the valley and, play in the creeks and all that stuff. But yeah, it's so nice. You would love it. It's really pretty.
Thank you.
Steve, is your hand up?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, it is. Hey, Mike, just a curiosity question. And maybe given the fact that these are custom homes, I was just curious what the average price point would be, maybe average square footage of these houses. Because I'm sure there's not going to be real small, real big. They're all going to be relative the same, but was just curious.
Yeah. So,
Mr. Chairman, a point of order. I don't think we are actually allowed to ask that kind of that question.
Okay. All right. It was a curiosity question. So thank you. Never mind.
Sorry.
I'm happy to volunteer the information, Mr. Mayor, if you care to hear it.
That's all right. Thank you, though.
Never mind. Never mind. My mistake, Mike. Sorry about that.
That's all right, Steve. That's all right.
Any
Thank
other questions?
Mr. Brost, if I may.
Sure.
And this is to the two council people and mayor, particularly Mr. Brost and the mayor, relative to their positions on the Planning and Zoning Commission. Mr. Whalen, Travis, and I had a conversation in our subdivision and development regulations. Given that there is 8 lots or more, we are required to encourage him or require Whalen Custom Homes to build an individual wastewater treatment plant on the site versus septic systems. And the department's encouraged Mr. Whalen to submit a waiver request. It's part of the code that waivers in certain instances can be granted if the circumstances justify such. And so from the department's perspective, we looked at 13 lots on 66 acres as probably being one of those circumstances the commission should consider. So I'm just advising you of that. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. Obviously, we would want to, see what that waiver request looks like, but conceptually, I would support that.
Thank you.
Yeah, just for what it's worth, Mr. Mayor and members of the committee. So again, building numerous large lots are large lot homes in Wildwood. I put in between 10 and 20 private waste treatment systems per year, and they are they're not they're not the waste treatment systems that they used to be. They're very sophisticated. A lot of them are very mechanical, and they are so much more environmentally friendly than a community wastewater treatment system. Just less regulation, less maintenance, and the soil here is optimal for these types of systems. So we put them in all the time. I know what happens. I've put in private community waste treatment systems, and it's just, that would be something that someday when I'm a resident of Wildwood, I would come and ask you to reconsider taking that, changing that in your code, just because it's so difficult to keep those things maintained and properly serviced. So with this level of density, private systems for each lot make all the difference in the world, and the soil conditions are perfect for that. So I just thought I'd throw that in there for whatever that's worth.
So, Mr. Whalen, have you had the soil tested?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And,
Yes, sir.
and by and large, I agree with everything you just said. So,
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's so for just for what it's worth, the testing that used to be done for septic systems was called a perk test. And it was a test of how quickly water drained into the earth but now EPA, Department of Natural Resources, are more concerned with the aeration instead of letting the earth pull the bacteria out of the gray water, the wastewater. They want the wastewater. They want this, the field to be aerated. They want oxygen to permeate into the treatment and basically aerate the gray water and let oxygen disperse or eliminate the bacteria before the water seeps into the ground and into the watershed. So, or the water table. So it's pretty interesting. And, that technology is light years ahead of what it was 20 years ago, and very sophisticated, but yeah, this is great soil. It's beautiful. I mean, it's you don't find it any better. You really don't. There's just not a lot of rock, and just really, really good soil for septic systems.
All right. Well, thank you. Are there any other questions, or Joe, or do you have any comments?
Mr. Bros, I believe Ms. Clark has a question. I'm sorry.
Oh, Councilmember Clark.
Thank you, Chair Bro. You spoke about the historic value of that one home. First, where is that house? And I'm a little confused, because what we read it almost looked like it was trying to convince us to keep it. And then you're saying that it's not worth keeping. So I'm a little confused.
Yes, ma'am. And that's, I was confused too when I read it. The first time I even saw this property was last October, when Mr. Theis's estate, he had two sisters, and anyway, they decided they were listing it. They decided to accept my offer on it, and one of the sisters put together an auction for all of Mr. Theis's personal property, and it was in poor condition at that time. And I walked through everything and kind of helped her out. She's an elderly lady, and she doesn't have any family, and she needed some help getting everything set up. So my son and I went and sort of cleaned it up and cut down or cut up tree limbs and got rid of some debris so she could have a safe auction. And at the time, the house wasn't habitable. I would say her brother, I hate to say this, but it was like a hoarder. Like you couldn't even walk through the house. But holes in the floor, holes in the structure, the old, the wiring in it is, from the 1930s, just really, really poor condition. But that was maybe at that point in time, something could have happened with it. But, since then, before we got the property under contract, and we're currently leasing the property from the estate to take care of it, it was marauded. I mean, the windows, the shingle, or the windows, shutters, the hand pump from the cistern. I mean, there were probably 1,000 people out there for the auction, and between the time of the auction in November and the time we actually had a contract on it, I mean, they even stole. Somebody came up and it's just trash. The wire fence that was around the yard. So, I mean, it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. Now, that being said, there's some cool stuff there that I think could be repurposed, like the metal roof's in really good shape. There's some beautiful corbels on the house that are really neat. There's some neat stuff left, but the structure itself is just trash. The barns are falling in, there's groundhog holes and all that stuff. So I would take exception with the description that I read from the Historical Society. But there are elements of that house, like it has a beautiful handrail inside, absolutely gorgeous. Redwood, but it's 26 inches high, which isn't building code for anything, you know? So I'm sure somebody could repurpose that. Things along that line. So there are elements of it that are cool and special, but the structure itself is destroyed. Mold,
Thank you.
animal feces, all that stuff.
Thank you. Mr. Vonich, would, from your perspective, what do you see with that building?
Well, first and foremost, Ms. Clark, the actual inventory, excuse me, the inventory was completed in March of 2015. So that's 7 years ago. So from that perspective, a lot can occur in 7 years, particularly if there's no general or regular maintenance. When Mr. Newberry and I visited the property, what we saw is, for the most part, what Mr. Whalen's described. A lot of people have been out there and obviously have taken advantage of what they could get off the structure. And so it was in bits and pieces. The Historic Preservation Commission will have to visit the property. We'll do a photographic record. We'll walk through it if we can. And then we'll encourage Mr. Whalen to repurpose those things that can be and use them in the houses that are on the site. And if they can't be used, to certainly consider donation to appropriate agencies that do repurpose things and keep them in the cycle of use. And that can include the city of Wildwood.
Any other comments? Questions? Yeah. Oh, Mr. Mayor,
I would move to adjourn.
can I
Thank you
second?
all.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you all again. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.